Have you ever considered that the entire modern American intelligence state was actually born from a cataclysmic, totally fatal failure of compartmentalization? This document completely shifts the perspective on World War II espionage. Welcome to Strategic Labs. Like and subscribe for more strategic insights. All right, let's just jump straight into this explainer.
So to really grasp the sheer scale of the shift we're about to talk about, we have to rewind a bit. How did U.S. intelligence actually operate before 1942? Honestly, it was chaos. Before the Second World War, the United States simply did not have a centralized professional intelligence agency like we do today. What we had was this highly fragmented, almost improvised web of isolated military and diplomatic groups. You had the Army doing its thing, the Navy doing theirs, the State Department in its own little bubble, and get this, they often treated each other with more suspicion than the actual enemy. Information was just passively gathered, and because there was absolutely no unified structure, the big strategic picture was completely lost in a sea of bureaucratic turf wars.
Now, before we break down exactly how they fixed that broken system, I have to mention where we're pulling this analysis from. Everything we're discussing today is based entirely on the brilliant book Shadow Intelligence Series, United States, the CIA, NSA, and the Hidden System That Shapes Power, Influence, and Global Strategy by Edward H. Whitmore. It's an absolutely essential read if you want to understand this hidden world. You can grab a copy on Amazon right now, and we've linked all the details for you in the description.
Okay, here is our strategic roadmap. We are zeroing in on three massively disruptive shifts: the advent of the hybrid warfare model, the convergence of deception and technology, and finally, the fatal flaw catalyst. These are the three pillars that quite literally rewired global power dynamics.
Let's dive right into point number one, the shift to hybrid warfare and the operational pivot of the OSS.
In 1942, driven by the sheer, desperate necessity of a global war, William J. Donovan created the Office of Strategic Services, or the OSS, and the contrast from what came before is just wild. Traditional military intelligence was passive, it was fragmented, and it was strictly tactical, meaning they only cared about what was happening right in front of them on the battlefield. But the new OSS doctrine? It was a complete 180. It was active, it was strategic, and crucially, it was paramilitary. Donovan knew that just passively collecting secrets was a losing game, so they aggressively combined espionage with sabotage, propaganda, and guerrilla warfare deep behind enemy lines. They integrated lessons from British intelligence and built something completely unprecedented in American history.
This really highlights the core philosophical shift here. Intelligence matured way beyond just static collection. It became a dynamic instrument of national strategy. And to actually pull this off, the OSS couldn't just hire traditional soldiers. They brought in this crazy, eclectic mix of people. We're talking academics, journalists, linguists, even historians. Why? Well, think about it. If you're trying to leverage local resistance movements in places like France or Yugoslavia, you need deep cultural and psychological fluency. You need people who can literally build indigenous human intelligence networks from the ground up.
Which brings us to point number two, the totally groundbreaking convergence of deception, technology, and the psychological front. The OSS quickly realized that war is also fought with information. They started blurring the lines between just gathering facts and actively altering the enemy's reality. A perfect example of this is Operation Fortitude in 1944. This was the massive deception campaign right before the Allied invasion of Normandy. It was an absolute masterclass in misdirection. First, they deployed double agents to feed the Nazis false reports. Then, they broadcast fake radio traffic to simulate entire troop movements. They even went as far as fabricating physical dummy convoys and fake armies. This wasn't just collecting intelligence anymore. This was orchestrated misinformation that completely misdirected the German forces before a single shot was ever fired. But, human deception alone just wasn't going to cut it. The OSS figured out pretty early on that they had to marry human insight with new technological ingenuity. Enter SIGINT, or Signals Intelligence. A great example from the source material is how they strategically infiltrated the German V-1 and V-2 rocket programs. The OSS realized that human spies, aerial reconnaissance, and wiretapping, on their own, each of these methods was basically flying blind. It was only by integrating all of them, crossing the tech intercepts with the on-the-ground informant reports, that they finally got the complete picture of the existential threat these rockets posed. Relying on a single source was officially a thing of the past.
Now let's pivot to our third and probably most crucial point, the fatal flaw and the absolute catastrophic cost of compartmentalization.
Because even with all these incredible innovations from the OSS,
The wartime experience exposed a massive, glaring vulnerability in how the United States handled its secrets. We have to talk about 1941, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Now, yes, this happened before the OSS was even created, but it was the haunting ghost that drove literally every single intelligence reform that followed. Pearl Harbor was the ultimate tragic realization that a fragmented system was fatally flawed. The crazy part? It wasn't that the US had zero warning. The problem was that the system itself was structurally broken.
The root of the whole disaster came down to institutional silos. The U.S. had actually intercepted and decrypted critical parts of Japanese communications before the attack. But because of insane bureaucratic turf wars, deep interagency mistrust, and just pure information hoarding between the Army, Navy, and civilian departments, that actionable data never reached the decision-makers in time. Pearl Harbor proved with devastating clarity that if you don't have a unified command and real interagency communication, having the best intelligence in the world is completely useless.
And that brings us to the culmination of all this, the foundation of power and the blueprint for the modern CIA.
You see, the wartime mandate of the OSS was only ever meant to be temporary. But after seeing it in action, leaders knew there was no way they could go back to the fragmented, dark ages of the pre-war era. Just look at the rapid evolution here. Pre-1942, we've got those dangerously isolated military silos. Then 1942 hits, the OSS is born, and they centralize covert ops, proving the value of a unified approach. By 1944, operations like Fortitude show absolute mastery over intelligence as an active, war-winning weapon. And finally, driven by the nightmare of 1941 and the looming shadow of the Cold War, 1947 brings the National Security Act. This single piece of legislation births the Central Intelligence Agency, taking a temporary wartime experiment and turning it into a permanent peacetime pillar of American global strategy.
Which leaves us with a pretty sharp, provocative question to think about. Based on everything we've unpacked today, is intelligence merely a tool of war, summoned only when the fighting starts? Or is it actually the true engine of global power? Think about it. Wartime necessity birthed an institution whose invisible shadows continuously shape diplomacy, conflict, and the very balance of the global order we live in today. It really challenges everything we think we know about how the world is actually run.
This is just a preview. For the full deep dive, check out our long-form podcast on the channel. See you in the next one.